A gentleman understands that reading fiction is just as important as reading non-fiction. There is so much great literature out there that is not only wildly entertaining, but also incredibly interesting and philosophical. So in this video, I'm going to share with you 5 fiction books that I think every gentleman should read. These are all personal favorites of mine. They've made me question my philosophy on life, taught me valuable lessons, and of course, they've been impossible to put down. With this list, I decided to focus mainly on more modern fiction, and perhaps I'll do a video in the future with a focus on older texts. But I think these 5 books are great starting points because they're all very accessible and easy to understand. If you are into style, you might view aesthetics as a huge part of your life, and you may desire for your life to imitate art in some way. This is what The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde is all about. Much like the author, the character, Dorian Gray, is a dandy, but his obsession with beauty and pursuing a life of pleasures eventually becomes his ruin. I think this novel is important for a gentleman to read for one main reason. You see, as a young man, you might find yourself with 2 choices. Either follow your temptations, devote yourself to pleasure, and live hedonistically without a thought for the consequences, or you can focus on your work, do what you know inside to be good, and avoid falling into the traps of sin. It's this struggle between temptation and morality that forms the base of this story, and you may find yourself in the same shoes as Dorian Gray at some point in your life. It's very short, and for a novel written in 1890, very easy to read. So I highly encourage you to pick up a copy of Dorian Gray, especially because the movie and TV adaptations have been so bad. You won't find the same life lessons anywhere else other than this book. It's likely that you grew up reading Roald Dahl's children's books. I know my childhood was filled with memories of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, James and the Giant Peach, and my personal favourite, The Witches. So it was a delight when I rediscovered Roald Dahl as an adult. Roald Dahl wrote many stories that are far from suitable for children, some of which were even published in Playboy magazine. My favourite character that he created is by far Oswald Cornelius. I would describe Oswald as a more rakish James Bond type who travels the world enjoying his eccentric hobbies and pursuing women relentlessly. And the more complicated and dangerous his game of seduction, the better. Although he is very successful, his tales always end with some hilarious and unfortunate twist. Oswald is also a caricature of an old English gentleman with exotic tastes, and he's a snob to the point of comedy. So when I'm looking for a bedtime story, an Uncle Oswald will always put me in a good mood before I go to sleep. And I think it's marvelous to have an author that you can connect with both as a child and an adult. So if you haven't encountered Roald Dahl's adult writing, I highly encourage you to pick up a copy of My Uncle Oswald. It's a collection of short stories, and he also has some other good collections like Switch Bitch and Kiss Kiss. My third suggestion for a novel that every man should read has to be one of the original James Bond books by Ian Fleming. Many consider Casino Royale to be his best, but I also love Diamonds Are Forever and Goldfinger. I simply love the way Ian Fleming wrote. He has the perfect pacing, and he has the most beautiful turns of phrase that transport you perfectly into James Bond's world. I think his abilities as a writer have only been overshadowed by the success of the movies. But there's a big difference between the novels and the films. Due to the time period in which they were written, there's something a bit more classy and seductive about the written James Bond. But they are also very easy to read, making them perfect vacation or bedtime books. So if you haven't already, I highly encourage you to pick up your first Ian Fleming novel, and I'm sure it won't be your last. I think it's important for a gentleman to feel a sense of agency in his life, not just another cog in the machine. One of the best ways this awakening can happen is by reading a chilling piece of dystopian fiction. Brave New World by Aldous Huxley is by far my favourite work in this genre. Although it's fictional, there are themes in Brave New World that will remind you very much of the society we live in. It's a slightly terrifying book, but it's also important to read fiction that makes us somewhat uncomfortable as well as books that bring us joy. You could also read 1984 by George Orwell, as I highly recommend, but I do think Brave New World is more relevant and applicable to our current society. We live in a society where endless dopamine is available 24/7, but these drips of pleasure can be our greatest enslavers. The idea in Brave New World is that slavery can come in the form of positive reinforcement and superficial pleasure. And I think reading this message in the form of a novel is much more insightful and thought-provoking than a lot of the online discussion about a similar topic. It will inspire you to take on an alternative point of view that I think is incredibly freeing and empowering. So I encourage you to pick up a copy of Brave New World and reflect on the similarities between that world and our current society. Every young man should take some kind of adventure in his life, and there are few greater literary adventures than the one described in Jack Kerouac's On the Road. There aren't many books out there that will inspire a greater sense of freedom and desire to travel than this novel. The protagonist, Sal Paradise, is a fictionalized version of the author who takes a rambling coast-to-coast trip around the US. Sal has very little plans for this trip, rather he allows the people that he meets and the places that he goes to decide his next move. Life should be filled with some unpredictability, and it's all there in this book. So next time you are at a place in life where you feel stuck or bored with your situation, pick up a copy of On the Road. It will reignite your ambition for adventure and remind you how truly free you are as a man. And I think that can be a nice antidote to some of the more terrifying ideas in Brave New World. On the Road is also a portrayal of a fascinating time in American history, focusing on the counterculture and the Beat generation. Sal's adventures are filled with jazz, drug use, and poetry, inspiring generations of artists after him like Hunter S. Thompson, David Bowie, and The Doors. Gentlemen, I hope you have enjoyed my first ever video talking about my favorite books and why I think you would enjoy reading them. This time I am particularly excited to hear from you in the comments about your favorite works of fiction. I'm sure you have some novels that weren't included on this list, so I'm keen to know what they are and why you like them so much. Let me know also if you've enjoyed this video and you'd like to see another one, because I would love to do a video focusing on my favorite works of non-fiction that I think every gentleman should read. Until the next one, how about taking a look at 7 signs that you are a true gentleman? In this video, I discuss important character traits that have sadly been forgotten by many people today. Fortunately, you can buck the trend by still displaying the values of a true gentleman. So I hope you enjoyed that video. Thank you for watching this one, and I look forward to speaking with you all in the comments.